you come, like I have this opportunity with a couple developments.
Wait a
So
second. He told you to come run the property management division when you had no experience in property management?
yep, you're smart, you figured it out. The funny thing is, the moment I got here in town, actually, those developments I said, they fell through. So I don't really have the position for you. But you should just start sales. You should just start being your own agent anyways, because you'll be good at it. It was just like, do your own thing, you know?
Okay.
And just out of probably pure kind of just tenacity, I hustled. Like every single weekend, probably 40 weekends a year, I'd hold an open house. I'd knock on the doors. And it's 6 months in, I sold like 9 houses. And it got the momentum going, at least during that time. I was really starting to I was like, man, I can do this. I started to get confident in the sales ability and understanding the process and all that. And the agent who I'd used previously, he came back to me. I have this development now. I want you to run the property management.
Hey guys, welcome to the Realized Gains podcast. We're on episode 76. My name is Stephen Tran. I'm an Oregon and Washington real estate agent, and I invest in multifamily and short-term rentals.
And I'm your co-host, Jordan Lee, mortgage lender based in Portland, Oregon, licensed in about 10 states, and I invest in single-family rentals.
And Jordan, who did we have on episode 76?
Super fun episode. This today we've got Luke Marvel, who's actually a high school and middle school even classmate of mine, who is, he's kind of reached that developer stage. Back in 2015, he hit Realtor of the Year working for Barracks Townhomes, where he sold. Do you remember how many homes he sold? Was
hundreds.
A couple hundred in the year. Anyway, yeah. You'll hear in the story. If you're interested in learning about development, about problem solving in real estate.
Housing.
Yeah, he talks a lot about the asset class of student housing. He's based in College Station, Texas. I think you'll find this podcast super interesting.
Check it out.
Hey guys, welcome to the Realized Gains podcast. I'm Stephen Tran. I'm your co-host Jordan Lee, and we're super excited to have my actually middle school classmate Luke Marvel here on the show. He's in College Station in Texas, and he actually was the #1 realtor in the country for Century 21. What year is that, Luke? 2020?
2015.
Oh, 2015.
It's been almost 10 years. It's crazy.
Along with many other accolades, and is in development now. So to get things going, Luke, do you want to just give us sort of your background? Like, obviously we grew up in the Salem area, but you're in Texas now, like kind of how that journey happened, how you found yourself in real estate, and your story, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And stop me anytime, or if you guys have questions, feel free to jump in. My parents, my dad was a physician, so I don't have like a background in real estate. It wasn't like I grew up in the industry. I do remember kind of at a very
was he disappointed that you didn't become a physician like my dad was?
I don't, they're probably disappointed in me at some level, but we can guess as to why. I'd always had kind of an interest in real estate and in hotels. And I even wrote some papers in middle school and high school about it. And honestly, I don't really know why.
Oh, really?
But I ended up going to Pepperdine University in kind of LA area for college. And
that was for fun or for school?
Both. It was both. Yeah, it was awesome. So, but through that experience, I ended up, you kind of, always have pressure to get a job and probably do what you have to do, not what you want to do. So I ended up majoring and kind of pursuing several internships in like finance and accounting. And so I did.
What did that look like back then? Because were those paid internships, or was it like?
They were. Yeah, I mean, honestly, they were paid pretty well. Like for the time. I mean, salaries have probably doubled since then, but I think I made like $15 to $20 an hour back then.
Nice. This is when it
was for college intern,
sophomore year, and at Pepperdine, would like recruiters come in, or how did you go about and finding those things?
No, I mean, there probably were some recruiters that came in. I mean, I hustled.
This was like investment banking time, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And I did like Target, I did Enterprise,
Oh
Rent a
wow.
Car,
Okay.
I did and then Raytheon that does like defense systems, radars, missiles, that sort of stuff.
Okay.
Um, that's actually who kind of I did the longest stint with. I did about 2 years with in college and did
Hmm.
like project based 30 to $50 million projects. And then I ended up going to like their full kind of business unit accounting department at like a $4 to $5 billion level. So it was really good experience, I'll
That
say. And
sounds
they
like
moved you
serious things
around.
for internships.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was intern, and then I mean, it was, and then I went on full time with them for about
Oh,
three
cool.
years after college, and they ended up. I did a little bit in LA, and then moved me to Dallas. Who had I met my future wife,
Okay.
who was from Texas. So it's kind of it worked. It just worked well. But I'd say a lot of like what I learned in that was, I mean, honestly, like Excel modeling, um, P&Ls, how to make money, and like those skills. I mean, to date, I'm usually one of the best Excel people that I know.
Hmm.
And like those same skills have been priceless, I think, in development and project modeling and being able to understand and tweak it and yeah, I mean, just create value through that process. So like, it's one of those things. It wasn't exactly what I thought I wanted to do long term, but like, it's definitely helped get me to where I wanted to go. Um, and then, from there, I'd say I worked there for about 3 years. We got married. My wife went to veterinary
Hmm.
school. The only one in the state of Texas is at Texas A&M University, which
Yeah.
is basically the biggest university in the nation, and it's in College Station. And I'd been interested enough in real estate to kind of like start looking at, I'd always Google like what are the best markets in the nation? Where's it good to invest? Cash flow markets. And it was at that time, I remember College Station and Boise, Idaho were like the two best cash flow markets in the nation. And
Really?
I'd never even been to College Station. So it was kind of this like, man, like I've had good experience, like kind of enjoy what I'm doing, but not a ton. Always wanted to get into real estate, and like we're going to this market that I've seen on paper, but I've never really known.
Hmm. So you're
And
kind of
so
thinking about investing, looking at it from an investment mindset before, but you hadn't like
correct,
thought about becoming a realtor exactly at the time.
100%,
Okay,
100%, yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and we moved. Well, it was kind of a tiered thing, but she moved down here to go to school, and kind of like at the same time, I'd never bought a house at that point. It was like 2010. Um, we looked, I was like, let's look at what's out there. We ended up looking and buying a duplex.
Nice. You started the
Where
duplex. Who gave
duplex
you that
is
advice? What made you decide to do that?
well, it's the duplex is just a great tool, especially for the first time home buyer.
So
But you can
smart.
put, I mean, I think we put like 5% down,
Nice.
and then you're using the income from the other side to substantiate more or less the financials of it.
So this is
Uh,
2010 in College Station. How much was the duplex?
oh, I should look. I'd say 250,000
Oh
or
wow.
so.
Okay.
Uh,
And was your mortgage, how much was your mortgage payment subsidized? Do you remember? Like, was it,
I want to say the monthly payment might have been like 1,400, and the other side paid about 900.
my God.
And it's like,
That's
I mowed the lawn for a while, and then I was like, I don't really love living mowing the lawn. So we ended up getting like a, $40 a month lawn guy.
nice.
But yeah, it's still, I mean, after everything, it's $600 a month,
That's
$600 a
crazy.
month. And we're obviously, paying in principal
Right.
and
Hmm.
kind of making equity, obviously on it. So,
So,
that was kind of the first foray, and through that experience, I actually met a broker. It was one of the top brokers in town at the time,
mm.
and we kind of struck a friendship. I was interested.
He was your agent to find the house or?
He was my agent to find the house.
Okay.
Yep. Um, and struck a friendship. Obviously, kind of, I was interested, and he was like the conduit into that. So,
Hmm.
I would strike up conversations with him, find reasons. Long story short, this progressed over several months, and he's like, "Why don't you come? Like, I have this opportunity with a couple developments. Like, why don't you come run the property management division. And I'll start up a property management division. We can do property management for these developments, and he would sell them.
Wait a
So
second. He told you to come run the property management division when you had no experience in property management?
100%. Yep.
Nice.
Well, you had the
Yeah.
duplex.
He's like, you're smart. You understand finances. You figure it out. And I was like, yeah, let's go. So I did what any responsible husband would do, immediately quit my job and moved out. So the funny thing is, the moment I got here in town, he's like, this is like a month after we'd had this conversation. He's like, actually, those developments I said, they kind of fell through. So I don't really have the position for you. But you should just start sales. You should just start being your own agent anyways, because you can make money at it. You'll be good at it.
Classic bait and switch. I love it.
Oh yeah, completely. It wasn't like be a part of my team. It wasn't anything. It was just like do your own thing,
Oh, cool.
And so, I mean, just out of probably pure kind of just tenacity. I mean, it was hard. We were still kind of, it was 2011, 2012. It was still kind of the aftershock of 2008.
Yep.
Things were slow, but kind of starting back. So, I mean, I hustled like every single weekend. I mean, probably 40 weekends a year, I'd hold an open house. I would go the day before, I'd print out like 35 flyers in color. I'd knock on the doors. I'm saying I'm having an open house. Like Brittany, my wife, still kind of makes fun of me for it, but it's like it got this momentum going.
Yep.
And it's like 6 months in, sold like 9 houses, and 12 months in, I sold like 12 more, and it got the momentum going, at least during that time. And I'd say kind of at the end of that year, I was really starting to I was like, man, I can do this. This is good. I was starting to get confident in the sales ability and understanding the process and all that. And Jeff, the guy, the agent who I'd used previously, he came back to me and he's like, I have this development now. I want you to run the property management division.
Nice.
And I'm like, I don't know if I want to, So, but at the end of the day, I said yes. Like it's probably the most prominent kind of development family in town. Was doing a townhome development. And it was about 116 townhomes, I think, at the time. He was going to sell them. I was going to do the property management, and he basically hired leasing staff and that sort of stuff. And this is really like before 2012-ish was kind of the start of I don't know how familiar you guys are with student housing as kind of an asset class. But it really, before 2010, 11, 12, student housing wasn't a thing. It was just random apartment complexes that weren't highly amenitized, didn't have this.
You mean this was the time that people were building them intentionally to be student housing and kind of had built models and got financing for them?
Exactly.
Question around that. Did you have to have a relationship with the university to build student housing?
So no. More or less nationwide, I'd say it's basically the same. Everyone's probably slightly different, but most student housing is built off campus, but the term is pedestrian to campus a lot of times. So it's walkable, 1, 2, 3 blocks. And usually it's highly amenitized. So $1 million plus pools, study rooms, exercise facilities. I mean, they're spending, if you build a $50 million project, you might be spending $5 million on the amenities. Nice. It's not just it's not just an apartment complex with a crappy pool. That it's really when they kind of turned that segment and said, let's jack up the rent and let's massively increase kind of the amenities offerings. And before that, the asset class, I mean, it almost storage went through this basically in the 2000s. But before that, the equity markets didn't really understand the asset class. So they wouldn't fund it. So you had a few here and there student housing complexes, but it was people who were self-funding.
Right, you couldn't get financing for it. Yeah.
Exactly. And the resale market, for building it and flipping it for merchant developers just wasn't there.
Right.
And so you kind of see these classes that go through these cycles of, the market starts to understand it. They start to be able to fund it. There's buyers that appear, and it works. But yeah, student housing really is about, I mean, I'd say there's some that were before this, but more or less about a 12-year-old kind of asset class. So we hit this right unintentionally, by luck, but hit in a college town, I'd say a townhome product that's kind of like basically a student housing type product. Kind of hit it at its infancy. So and I continued to sell a lot of stuff outside of, I'll say this developer relationship. But I stood up the property management and leasing division for this, and Jeff continued to sell. The first year that we did this, so kind of the pitch that we had, and this was a lot, we brainstormed and we put it on paper, and then we practiced, and the pitch that we had was essentially, we can sell to an investor and we'll guarantee that it's leased at certain rates, or we'll sell to a parent and we will help you. We'll either help you or draft the leases for the roommates. As a parent, if you buy it, we were able to structure the financials so that essentially your kid would be living free on a cash flow basis.
Nice.
And then it's like, if the property goes up 50 grand over the next 4 years, that basically pays for school. So it's like you could have saved zero for college and basically get college for free if the market's halfway decent. And then, on the other side is the investor side. It's like an individual investor a lot of times can't put 200, 300, 400 grand into a property that's highly amenitized, that has on-site property management, that knows the property, and that's open 7 days a week. And so it's like a kind of a fractional ownership type position where you can buy one at a small scale. It's also for 1031s. We were able to scale it up and down. So it's like you have a 1031 where you just cash out $2 million. We'll sell you 8 of them. We're very flexible and very instantaneous cash flow from day one because it's guaranteed to be leased.
Yeah.
So, and then we would obviously lease the properties that need to be leased and kind of play this matchmaker between tenants who wanted to lease, investors who wanted to buy, and parents. So the first year we went from, they'd sold 24 the year before. When we started, we sold 116 that first year.
Wow.
Did you have
So
to special, sorry, what is it called? Like special licensing for that, from the SEC to be able to sell it in that way? Or did you just sell them all like normal real estate?
Yep. We did. And again, this could vary state by state. I'm not 100% positive. Here in Texas, at least, townhomes is where you own, it's connected. It might be 4 to 7 units in a building, but you own the dirt underneath it. It's a fee simple ownership. And then you own the inside and the outside.
Right.
Versus a condo, you don't. Yeah.
It's still a master insurance policy though, right?
It's not.
Oh, it's not a master insurance.
It can be.
It doesn't have to be. Okay.
Yeah, does not have to be. So there's some strategic decisions there based on if you want to burn the HOA with it or not, or that sort of thing from a pricing perspective. But yeah, so we just, there's no SEC requirement. It's a simple piece of real estate.
Okay.
Well, and to answer your question too, you don't have to have a relationship with the school. There is a category called either on campus or P3, public-private partnership type projects that you can raise bonds for and do it on campus with a relationship there. But I'd say most of the normal standard student housing stuff is off campus.
Okay, great. And then just for our audience, are there any special nuances with housing students specifically? I know they're only there for like 9 months of the year. Like, how do you structure the leases, things like that?
So I'm trying. So yes, there probably are. They're really 12-month leases, usually with a 1 to 2 week turn cycle. I'd say standardly, and it depends on when school starts. Ours here is like August 1st through, let's say, July 22nd. And so it's not, from a cash flow perspective, it's fine. Timing wise, and it depends on the popularity of your market. Here, like, we will lease it, they'll move in August 1st, and we start asking for renewals. And this has moved up every year, but we start asking for renewals on October 1st. So the majority of properties are probably leased by March 1st, if not before. But like as of like we right now, all of our stuff that we own, basically they're getting a demand letter that says they have to renew by January 1, or they may not have the right to renew anymore.
Got it.
So it's this massively accelerated schedule that can be good, can be bad, but just to make sure you don't, because if you miss that move-in time frame, it's very hyper cyclical. So if you miss that move-in time frame, if your rent's 1,500 usually, you're charging 900 or 1,000 just to try to get filled. So you don't want to miss the cycle.
Right. What about occupancy wise? Like where have you guys been at? Is there like a consistent number, or does it fluctuate?
Um, on so it depends a little bit on that development. So we built, and we're actually still building 10 years later.
Oh, wow.
But 100%, 100%.
Oh, it's always occupied. And
Yeah, we went through
like for
one year of softness where it's probably 95, 96%. And that was just because about 14,000 beds got built within about an 18-month period.
Right.
So it's at market saturation, but
Yeah.
besides that, 100%.
And so the new ones you're building now, just for like a rough idea, if someone was getting interested in doing like a student housing townhome investment, what would that look like to buy a one that you have on the market, or are you building now? Like what would they expect to come in with down, and then like would they expect to be able to cash flow, and what does management fees look like, or is it all kind of one package?
Yeah, no, great questions. So nationwide, same trends probably are what I'm saying. We used to be when we started, we were at like a 7% cap rate. So basically, like after all your expenses minus mortgage, you'd be at about a 7% return. Those have compressed, and those have compressed everywhere. We're probably about 5.
Okay.
Which, obviously is a little bit hard to make sense when you're paying over that in interest.
Right.
But from a cost standpoint, like the new ones we're building right now are 325,000 to 430, I believe.
Okay.
Those are 3 or 4 bedroom townhomes. We build to a higher quality, so it's like for here at least, it's 100% masonry exterior, brick, stone, hardy, very very well built. But to be completely honest, it's because students are a little bit harder on the product. So
Yeah.
you build it hardier. It looks better after 5 years. And then cash flow, you're gonna have to put about 25% down. Regulatorily 75. You have to put at least 20%, 20 to 25% down, depending on the lender here. And interest rates, depending. Right now, we don't do a lot with the secondary market. We do mostly local lenders, but at least
like
ours
local
are about
credit unions or whatever.
Yeah, there's a lot of actually large, but state and regional banks that do almost all the construction lending. But it's about 6.5% right now.
Okay.
It's kind of what we're seeing. So that's probably pretty close. And then cash flow wise, if you put 25% down, to be completely honest, you're basically breaking even. But you're probably having a little bit of return. But over time, they've averaged at least, let me say this right. At least 5 to 7% a year appreciation over the last decade. So it's pretty consistent, and we really haven't had like a downturn. It's stabilized, maybe dropped 1% or something, but it's not
doesn't have the big swings. Yeah, Texas has some different lending laws that other states don't. That it seems like helped with some of the during like the financial crisis and stuff. That's pretty interesting. And how does the management, like you guys are like do everything right? Like you'll take care of all the management part.
Yeah, so it's a two-tiered system. There's an HOA that you have to pay, and then there's the property management. HOA takes care of all exterior maintenance, landscaping, tree trimming, fences, staining, that sort of stuff. Basically to make keep the community beautiful. And then property management is really like the obtaining of tenants and leasing out the property, collecting rents, that sort of stuff. So you have that option, but you don't have to. You can lease it on your own. You can kind of do whatever you want there. So, but so we built the first year of 2012, we did 116, and then we kept going, and it was very good, I'll say. There were lots of ups and downs, and let me say that. My partner, Jeff, got in a fight with the developer 2 years in, and it just went on for a month or two. Jeff ended up getting fired. So
Nice.
I took over. Now the next day, he's like, do you want to take over sales? And I'm like, sure, yeah, we can do that. And so it got to a point where, I think that year, that was 2014, that first season, we did about 100, 150, 170 townhomes. And the speed, I mean, literally 12 hours a day, probably 6 days a week. We didn't have kids at the time. So, I mean, I really probably worked 7 days a week. But I mean, you couldn't answer the phone fast enough. You couldn't deal with issues fast enough. I had right hand man still with me, but it was a feeding frenzy, which was awesome. But I mean, it's crazy, and it got to the point where like people were selecting granites and paint colors and modifications and that sort of stuff, and it's like the superintendents couldn't keep up. So the construction superintendents. So it got to the point where I'm like, guys, hold on, we got to I'm calling a weekly builder meeting. We're having spreadsheets. We're reviewing the takedown schedules, the closing dates, what needs to be done. We implemented a sign system where we do all of the selections in English and Spanish, laminated on the window, and several other kind of checkpoint pieces that I'd say made the process a lot smoother. But what that led to was the next year, he said, the developer said, like, you're doing such a good job managing the construction crews. Do you want to take over the construction and the development piece? And I'm like, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. So so the development piece is like roads, storm sewer, water, fiber, electric.
Whole new ballpark.
Whole new ballpark. Yeah, I mean, it's the same concepts, but yeah, definitely a large learning curve. And so that was 2015 when I took over that, and that was the year. I mean, between the barracks, we sold about 175 at the barracks, and then I sold what does that mean, about 60 outside the barracks. It was like 234 houses in a year, which is me and an assistant. No transaction coordinator, nothing else. It was us. It was awesome. So it's but that's when I got like the number one in the US. But like that's really the probably the progression of getting kind of into development and construction. As to like we had issues, I tried to solve them. I'm somebody like I like growing too. I like always learning new information. I like being more knowledgeable and kind of merging all that information together. So there's like even today there's like a constant drive to like do something bigger, do something more complex, do more. Kind of this like discontentness that probably may not make me happy, but it does well for business. So
yeah, I was gonna ask, I mean, with all these opportunities coming to you, what seems like every year, apparently, did you ever have like an imposter syndrome feeling?
yeah, I mean, I probably, I mean, to be completely honest, I probably always do. Um, I think that's natural, like kind of always. And correct me if I'm misinterpreting what you're saying, but like it's kind of the question, like, do I have what it takes?
Yeah.
Like, can I really do this? Like,
Right.
I mean, I think that's natural to have. I think I've probably gotten to the point over the last couple of years to say like, there's not, and there's probably some stuff outside, but there's probably not a whole lot that we can't figure out and know who to call. But like, but it takes a lot of time to get there, and you still have that in the back of your mind, like, well, what if this fails? What if we don't fill it? What if we run out of money? What if?
Yep.
And I don't know that. I mean, I've talked to guys who do much bigger deals, and I don't know that ever changes.
Right.
But maybe someday.
So you got your knee deep in development. Now that you're in that space, are you still in like selling houses too and spending time with that, or are you kind of moving all your energy towards bigger things and bigger picture stuff?
Yeah, so we do a little bit of everything, and I'll say the transition. So as we got to the end of like the 2018, 2019, to be honest, like the barracks, which was the development, we did 850 houses and townhomes. It's 170 acres. We basically ran out of room. And I'd gone to Heath, the developer, and said like, let's grow. We looked all over Texas. We used like there's some data services where you can look at employment and occupancy and rent rates and all that stuff. And we identified two markets and put large tracts, 150 acre tracts under contract in both. Because I was like, let's do this again in other markets. The Ended up proceeding with purchasing one of them, but not the other one.
Mhm.
And I'd say at the end of the day, like what we did, it burns people out. It burns most people out.
Oh yeah.
And I think Keith just wanted to slow down a little bit and focus on what we had, and I wanted to keep going. And I was like, there's not a whole lot for me to sell and develop here, so like I have to do something. So in 20, to be honest, like weeks before COVID hit, I I gave him like a 2 month window, but I left the barracks
Mm.
and said like I still want to be friends. I'll still sell or develop or do anything you want me to, but I need to be able to do other stuff too. And That's a kind of a whole another topic with COVID and all the strains it's had over the last 4 or 5 years. But what I really, and I brainstormed intentionally, I had this document that I did for probably almost a year of like, if I could start over, what do I want to do? Like, what drives me? What does that look like? What does that feel like? And so it came down to like, I love selling. But I also love the process of like seeing kind of like creating like, and I'd be creating like seeing, you plan a building, you plan a development, you get the approvals, probably 75% of the works before it even breaks ground. And then you
Yep.
literally get to see it come to life. And then you also have to deal with like what you screwed up. And so basically it's like, I want a small team because I was burnt out on managing people,
Yep.
and I want to do brokerage, development, and construction. And a large part of that is like we have this experience, but I was like, I want to be I want to be a fixer. Like I want to step into the messy situations, and not just that, but like I want to be the first person you call when you have an issue. And so that was kind of the goal, like starting out. Um, it's been a long road to get there, but I'd say we're there. Like we are, I'd say most of the big deals where we're at, we're a part of, we're probably the first call or one of the first calls if banks have issues, if banks have to repo stuff, they're calling us like,
Mm.
what do we need to do? How do we do this? Save us, help us. Same thing with developers. It's like, why are you selling residential lots at onesies, twosies, threesies? Let's package them up and sell them all at once. Let's de-risk your position. So we're trying to provide the value through like creative solutions. And we still sell individual houses, don't get me wrong. But like, I mean, this year we've probably sold like a package of like 200 lots.
Wow.
We tried to sell, we almost closed, but they backed out a couple weeks ago, like a package of over 100 houses. So I mean, we try to do some larger stuff too. But that's kind of like a lot of this, and I'd say we intentionally do that, one, because I enjoy it, but two, we view it as like a risk mitigation kind of lever. Because like sometimes when sales are down, is a good time to plan developments, plan things so that in a year or two you have something built when the
Yeah.
market comes back. And this kind of under the same line, almost everything we build, houses, townhomes, or multifamily, is at a price point that's rentable as well, and
Mm.
at least breaks even, like a DSCR of at least one.
Okay. That's
Thankfully,
your
not
end
one.
goal, is to have something that you can sell to a first-time home buyer, or something that you could rent out for
Correct.
some
Yeah.
investor could put 20, 25% down and get a DSCR of one on it.
Exactly. And it's probably for like in our market, you build $1 million house and you rent it out, your DSCR is like a point 0.4. You know, it's just highly risked. Like that's how you go broke. And so we view it as like we can build 10 houses, we'll most likely sell them. But if I mean worst case, we just put them for lease and we lease them. And we've done that over the last 4 years several times. And
That's such
sometimes we
a
hold them, sometimes we sell them.
that's
But
such a smart stopgap to me. Like, not gonna build it unless worst case scenario I have to rent it out and rent it out for break even. That makes sense.
yeah. Yeah. And so I mean, I'm trying to think what else.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about like fixing things, doing these
Yeah.
like when a banker gets in trouble, like what's a typical situation where you're saying that a banker has to repossess something and they're gonna call you? Like, what does that look like?
Um, and let me preface this. Most of the time, we're able to kind of like just talk it through and give advice, and it probably doesn't get that far.
Hmm.
But our ears to the
And in
ground
that
enough, and
in that example, like let's say you're able to talk it through someone and have them help them figure it out. Do you get to take advantage of a consulting fee, or is it you just give them your time and
yeah,
hope that they'll send you something later?
yeah, and they will. I mean, yeah, I mean, we do. We try to work in the right direction all the time,
Mhm.
and sometimes you get paid a lot for it, and sometimes you get paid nothing for it. But we still want to be that person,
Yep.
at the end of the day. I'm trying to think of a specific situation, but I mean, this probably applies to a couple people over the last 2 years, but like, there's a couple builders who've kind of gotten over their skis and built, 5, 10 larger houses, and may or may not have used all the funds that they received for those houses for the house.
Mm.
And so a lot of it is saying like, regardless of what's happened, let's look at like what the market is, what can you rent it for? Like if the bank took it back, what can you rent it for? What can they sell it for? What is a reasonable expectation of like when, and this is all like kind of behind the scenes. I'd say nobody else necessarily even knows about, these conversations that are going on. It's not like it's visible to the client who has the loan. But we're looking at just kind of the bank's risk on it.
Mhm.
And then it's like really, I mean, like a couple situations they got there's a high net worth individual or two to come in and like purchase and lease back the property to the person until it sells. And then like they split in the profits over a certain amount. But it'll like something like that will sometimes take it off the bank's balance sheet while still, you're not ruining somebody's credit. The bank gets out from under it, gets it off the red sheet, and investor can make some dollars in it. So I mean something like that. There's been some lot purchases that people really needed to get out of, and we said we'll do it, but at a certain price, and we'll buy it. We have some, I'll say, people that invest, private investor type stuff, and so sometimes it's the bank can't do the loan, but here's this other person and they can do the loan with these terms at this rate and buy out the bank type position. So I mean that's kind of maybe everything we do we look at from a holistic perspective. And so that's probably where we try to add the value is like we have the construction knowledge, we have construction cost knowledge, we have development knowledge, we have general lending knowledge.
And what
And
type, like
then
what size, like how many lots or how much acreage are you seeing that's kind of that has the most likelihood to fail, or like you end up consulting on a lot or being a fixer on, I guess? Or can it
I
be
mean
size?
yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of it's a very common rule with almost everything is like the more buyers you have, the less risky it is. So it's probably the higher price stuff. I mean, it's really where you end up in issues. Like if it's for us, if it's under 450 grand, it's 80% of the market can afford it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you can almost, maybe you lose a little bit, but you can almost always get out of it. It's the 800 to $1.5 million stuff.
So if you get like
They'll eat
something
your
10 or 15
lunch.
lots that have at $1 million price point, they often struggle.
They're more likely to.
Hmm.
Yep.
And
Yep.
is there some sort of creative solution for that that's different because of the price point, or like how do you approach that versus the smaller ones?
There's not always a real easy, I mean, I'm not gonna say there's like a perfect answer all the
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
time. So, but it's looking at, like um, I'm thinking of one specific. So it's like when the client says like, "Oh, we put it on the market and it should sell within a couple months," it's looking and saying like, nothing else in this subdivision has sold in the last year, and in this price point, there's only been two houses in the whole city that have sold, and honestly, his house looks horrible, and so there's some things to say like
Right.
you guys are already overfunded, like you funded more than you want to, but like putting $25,000 in landscaping, painting the exterior, maybe do some staging and some photography, like would do you well. Like that's something you could push
Hmm.
on with a client.
So are these
Um,
experienced
so
builders? I mean, how do they get themselves in this situation where they're messing up so much? You know what I mean? In terms of like with the market,
I
I
mean,
mean, what?
I guess it's the same problem that any flipper can have, right? Like it doesn't matter if you're
yeah,
doing it at a $300,000 house or $1 million house, right? You can all have
yeah.
the same issue, I guess, right?
Yeah, so there's kind of two, maybe the two categories of builders are like spec builders, building
Mhm.
spec houses without a buyer, and building like custom home builders, or like and those terminologies aren't perfect, but custom home is like if somebody else is getting the loan.
Right.
Custom home, like if you go get a builder, it's very hard. The only way that builder can really fail, I'd say, is misappropriating the funds,
Yeah.
using the funds you give them for your house on a different project,
Right.
which to be honest is nationwide is common. In a probably not a great way. But like
Unfortunately.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, you give them a couple $100,000 to pour your foundation, start framing. They start, and then 90 days later, you get lien letters saying they never paid the concrete company and they never paid the lumber company, and you owe 200,000. It's like, oh, okay, well,
Jeez.
it's not great. So that's why like it does reputation is important there. But I'd say the real area that is spec home building, which to be honest, we like all of the houses that we start don't have a buyer.
Right.
So we would do like 100% spec building.
Yep.
But we do it at a price point where you can lease it. If you do spec home building at a higher price point, I mean, honestly, you can make a lot of money when times are good, but when the demand turns off and interest rates escalate faster than they've ever escalated,
Yeah.
that's when you run into issues. I mean, in the last 2 years. So you end up like, we're going to make all this money to like, I'm bleeding $40,000 a month
Okay.
and don't have it.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, in this example, like maybe some of these big spec home builders back in like 2020, 2021, when the rates were 3%, were just like, yeah, we'll definitely make money. Is that what happened? They just kind of repeated the model during that time. And
Mhm.
then when they try to do it again in
Yep.
recent times, I mean, I'll just say it, they were just fucked.
Well,
You
yeah, I
know?
mean, you're
Yeah.
basing your pro forma on data that's not necessarily true. Like you can't guarantee, right?
Yep. And that's the problem. I mean, real estate's a very, like stocks, crypto, you can trade instantaneously. Real estate's, I mean, it depends, but let's say it's an average of a year adjustment cycle, right? So it's like the market sucks, interest rates are rising, but I just poured my foundation.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
It's like either and I may or may not have the money just to stop and stomach it and permitting and that sort of stuff. So it's like I have to continue this process and have to have this completed $1 million house in 9 months. And to be honest, like I think Federal Reserve, I think they knew like it was a dire situation, but they knew they were screwing some people in some industries that just can't adjust as fast. And it's like that's the cost of what we had to do as a nation.
Yep.
But like I don't think they didn't realize that some of that was coming. So, but
I mean, was any of this preventable? I mean, obviously, like you mentioned, like interest rates are changing and they're pouring the foundation and they have to finish up. Is there anything in terms of the processes that you would have changed if you were on their side to get it through? Like what would be your creative problem solving in that situation if you were on their end?
Well, and I'd say this is like a mantra we have is kind of like is like never take any option off the table. I think so many times we're like, well, we started, we have to finish. It's like, do you like ask those questions? That's like, why are we doing what we're doing? I'd say like right now we poured. I mean, this is a prime example. We poured 8 house foundations, and we are. I mean, to be honest, we plan to build all of them. But the market this last quarter has been pretty slow. So we have not touched 4 of them, and we are building the other. We're building the other
Mm.
4, and one or two at least go into contract. We'll start the other 4. But it
So
doesn't
you
make
might
sense to
lose some
me.
economy of scale, but you're not going to be screwed.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Logistically, it's not, nobody in our office loves it, but because it's harder on everybody because we have to get the subs out there twice to do all the work and stuff. But it just doesn't make sense to do it. So
Mm.
I mean, when interest rates were rising, this is what, October 2022, maybe September, October. Like, I mean, I probably very aggressively met with all of our lenders, and pressured them into locking our rates.
Nice.
Nice.
How long did they
So
let you lock for?
they let us lock for 3 years, sub 6.
Wow.
So that saved our ass,
Mm.
like, and part of that discussion with these lenders is a frank conversation. Like, if you don't lock the rates, you need to be prepared to take all these back. Like, and no lender wants to hear that. But like, they also don't want to take back 30 properties or,
Right.
so there's an issue there with sometimes like the bigger you are, the more it's like, we need this. This is good for everybody. It's going to squeeze your margin, but it's a lot better than the alternative.
Yeah.
And so like some of that stuff, it's like, it's so much easier to put your hole in the sand, or sorry, put your head in the sand
Yeah.
and like kind of ignore it and say like, oh, it'll probably get better. But it's like, let's move quickly, let's be decisive, let's do what we need to do. And we try to do
Yeah,
that on a daily
that's a
basis.
really good
So
point because I mean, how many people were predicting that rates were going to get better at that time? They're like, oh, rates will improve next year, beginning of next year, middle next year, rates will improve at that time. And
Yeah, every
meanwhile,
realtor
meanwhile,
says
you're like, no, I'm locking in my rates for 3 years. Screw you guys. Smart, really smart,
so
actually.
and again, it's like some of that is like every relationship we have is important. So it's like you guys are saying, it's like that conversation wasn't done in a moment. It was the last 5 to 10 years of conversations and trust building with those lenders
Right.
to get to the point where it's like, you earn the right to have those conversations.
Mhm.
So it's like, it's not done in a vacuum, but we kind of look at like the whole composition of like our career. I've given this kind of metaphor recently, but it's like a painting. Like, we're literally like every conversation, every city council, every buyer we have, every economic thing, every piece of information we get about the market or people in the community is like we're splattering paint on a canvas. And it's like you get to look back in 3 years and say, like, did we create something beautiful or did we create something horrendous? And it's like slowly, it's kind of like in an artistic way, almost like creating or crafting your career or the environment that you're working in or whatever. At least that's the way I look at it. So.
Yeah, I love that, and it's interesting to think about other recessionary proof or resistant type strategies. So to me, I'm hearing that market rate housing that you can rent out at a DSCR of 1. I'm hearing having flexible, just like mentality and thoughts, and being able to know when to cut your losses or like change your plan. Any other strategies that you would recommend to other like developers out there or other realtors in terms of like what are some strategies to do well during recessionary periods or periods where sales are down?
Um, and this goes back like the Reagan real estate crisis in the late 80s. There's two big investor developers that we've worked with that like during that time, they came out and said, like, we will never not have rental properties because of this. Like when all the business dried up. So like we kind of go back to like flex, like all of us work in a real estate sphere. That's what we know. Like, why wouldn't we own some investment properties? Why wouldn't we? Maybe we don't want to develop, but we probably have an inclination as to like a good spot or two that like in 5 years, I think something good's going to go on that little tract of land. Like I can buy it now, maybe it'll double in price. Like, so I would say look at your career more holistically. You can obviously go out and get another job, but like at the end of the day, trying to have, the multiple sources of revenue, but basically multiple things you can do at the same time that are going to make money in the long term. I think, and this isn't exactly what you asked, but like we are in a very unique or special industry, I think, from a tax perspective. And basically, you guys probably know this, but like you can be if you work more than half time in real estate, you can be classified as a real estate professional.
Yep.
So you can use your, if I have a property, whatever, most rental properties, once you do the tax depreciation, lose money.
Yep.
So if I make 100,000 a year or 200,000 a year, it's not that hard to figure out, like if I bought $5 million of properties, that would make me not pay any taxes. And regardless of how you feel in the whole situation, it's really like a calculation, but it's very synergistic too, to say like, I can make money over here that's taxed, but I can honestly make more money over here that's not taxed. And then I can 1031 it, do a 1031 exchange, like kind of exchange into different properties. It's not perfect. I'd say I don't know anybody who's done it perfectly for a long time.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's much more efficient because it makes you like, okay, I didn't sell houses for 2 months, but like if I look on paper, maybe I made 10 or 15 or 20 grand over here, technically on the properties I own. So I would say we again kind of look at it from a balance perspective on that. So,
use your real estate knowledge to build passive income through real estate. I like that.
I mean,
100%. And like long term, look at it from a long term perspective, not just like what I made this month. So
it just makes you a better agent too. Well, because you own it, you learn, but also like you're just not like if you like you said, if you don't sell for 2 to 3 months, like you're not starving, you're not you're not pushing your personal interests on your clients. You have the money to cover your expenses.
You're not breathing your commission breath all over them.
Breath, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and that's there's so much value into not having pressure in any situation and just trying to provide the most value, because like you look 10 years out, I think that's always going to be the best thing for your business. But it's like it's hard when you're like, man, I need to pay my credit card bills this month. So but there's one other I'll come back to it if I remember it.
Okay. Yeah, I did want to ask about like obviously your transition to your team, and like you said, you had to manage less people. How big is your team? And like you said, you still do like regular home sales too, right? So you're doing the development, you're doing the home sales. Which one do you like? Like, is there one that you're preferring more? And does it stretch you too much to do all those different things at once?
No. Yeah, I mean there's so many people out there that are like, I want to get big enough where I don't have to be in the weeds and the trenches. To be honest, I'm the opposite. I love being in the trenches. I love being busy. So yeah, we're busy. We're stretched, but I'd say we stay on top of our stuff more than anybody else out there. Our team right now is 5 people. We might add 1 or 2 over the years. At the barracks, that got to a point where it's more or less like 35-ish people reporting to me, and it's just I enjoy doing more than managing. And I say doing more than managing like interpersonal issues with the team.
Yeah.
I don't want to babysit you because you're hungover, because you went out. It's like I want to be in the work, not just like managing employee issues. So and a lot of people are the opposite. So there's no judgment there. It's just like what drives you.
So that started feeling more like you're like HR and managing corporate basically with your team
Yep.
before, and now
Yep.
it's a little bit more lax in a sense.
100%. Yeah, I would call ours is almost like a boiler room environment. Like you probably can't see, but Shelby's right here. We were very small office. It's constant communication. There's no privacy. It's it's 18 times a day. It's me saying, "Did we do this? Did we do this?
I
What's happening
mean,
here? Did
I
we hear
bet
from
your
this
colleagues learn
buyer?"
from you though. I mean, you learn from each other when you listen to people talk. I mean, that
100%.
when
Yeah.
I was in the office, when I first started, there was a really high producing loan officer in the office next to me, and I could always hear him through the wall. But I like
Yeah.
modeled my business off of him because he did a really good job. It's really
Yeah.
useful to have people talking around you.
I'm loud too, so everybody can hear me. But yeah, it's and again I feel lucky because it's like we feel like we found this sweet spot that's what I wanted. But I think it's also like it's creating the situation like some people want to be off half the time or I mean it's like it's identifying almost intentionally identifying like what drives you, what does the perfect situation look and taste and smell like, where do you want to be, like Brittany and I did this whole family goals thing, but it's like where do you want to be when you're 65?
Mm.
Like, what does that look like financially, with your family? Do your kids like you? What education level do they have? Do they, are they entitled, spoiled because they had too much money? Like what, do you have some passive income? Do you have rental properties? Do you not want that? Do you want to travel? Like, and then it's like you back it up to say, like, what do I need to do every year, 2, 3, 5 to get there?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, I want to be 65 and I want to have 10 investment properties that are paid off. Like it's not that like over the next 3 years, I need to buy one. It's all of a sudden it's like, okay, let's start the journey. Or I want my kids to have a certain skill, like, so we hired a nanny that only speaks Spanish because we said learning Spanish is very important. So it's like they have to learn Spanish. But kind of building in these intentionalities, I think is what we're trying to do. So
Great.
so
And I do want to hear what is that next 5 years for you for your business, this new venture of the last couple of years. What does it look like in 5 years?
But our kids, we have three young kids,
Yeah.
and I say young, but 7, 9, and 1. So a lot of it is planning for them and being intentional with them. And like I really want to, and even if it's not real estate, but like I love the process of building businesses. And so like giving my kids, like it sounds stupid, but like skills in Excel, and like my oldest has already started a business, so we did like the website, like giving these experiences that in my mind give knowledge at like 10 to 20 years earlier than I got that knowledge, is a big piece of just kind of setting them up for whatever they want to do. On the business side specifically, I'd say, I mean, honestly, continue to do what you're doing. I really like the size we're at. I really like what we're doing, but probably do bigger. I mean, we're going after some large, like we have I call it 60 to $100 million student housing development in the works.
Mm. So
And then
that's
we
still
have
the class that you love, the asset class that you love.
it is, yeah. We also have a like if it comes to fruition, it'd be like $150 million like residential master plan development. So
Mm.
it's just larger scale stuff. But with that, it's like you also have to realize like I'm signing up to not make any money for 5 years. So you also have to kind of put yourself in a position to be able to stomach that, and you have to have if you're married or whatnot, like the wife has to be okay with that, because it's like, I don't want to end up in year 6 making a bunch of money but being divorced.
Right.
So it's kind of balancing all that. But that's, I'd say, what it looks like. It's not a ton different than what we're doing now, just doing it more, doing better, and enjoying the people we're doing it with. So
And we always ask
I,
people, oh, go ahead.
well, I was gonna say one thing that is probably in this sphere, depending on how you do it, partners, and that's probably highlighted over the last 4 years. We've had several groups of very good partners, and I'd say every partnership we have is a little bit different, and we've had several groups of partners that have been exhausting,
Mm.
and they've made a bunch of money and ran out of it. they've gotten involved in drugs. We are left, probably half the partnerships we're in, we've been left to deal with the mess. And as I would term, like shovel shit in the trench. And we do it, and we're there every day, and we've made everyone, I think we've gotten out of every single one of them, to be honest, pretty darn well. But like who you partner with matters, and like you don't always know until you're in partnership with them.
Yeah.
So like if you have a good partner that you can trust, that you've seen, for several years and that sort of stuff, like hang on to them, build into them if you want to, but be choosy about your partners. So.
Well, that's the hard part when you said that you have to actually get into the partnership to find out, right? So do you have an interview process? How do you vet that out?
Good question.
Not exactly a spreadsheet thing, is it?
It's not always, no. And generally speaking, I would say the more stable a partner is, like if I look at they're very stable financially. Bankers have no problem giving them a lot of money. They've done, at least some sort of like multiple projects over 5 years plus. Most of the time with those people, it's been a good relationship. And I hate to say this because it's tough because like you want to support the newcomer, but it's usually the person who's probably a little more amped up, a little more like, I want to do this. I want to get involved. Like I want to start developing. I want to start building. Sometimes that person, I'll say, is really good for identifying properties and getting you in the door. But most of the time they don't make a great partner. And a lot of times you get in 50-50 and then it's like, well, I'm literally doing 95% of the work, and you're not bringing money and you're not, it's like, we got to renegotiate this because it's like taxing our company type of thing. So that's maybe if somebody's not experienced or not stable, like identify their strengths. Maybe their strength is finding a great property, and maybe you give them a commission or you give them what would have been that commission as an equity stake in the deal. But like don't go into partnership with them. I don't know. You got to decide for yourself, and usually the best lessons that you learn the most are the ones that cost you the most and were the most painful. So use that for the future. But yeah. So.
Okay, avoid the amped up kids. I gotcha. So I know a couple of those. Don't worry.
I know you're tight on time. We always like to ask people, if you were to recommend a first time investor, and I'd actually extend this question twofold to you because you've moved into development. So if you were to recommend something to a first time investor or an investor that wants to move up to a developer, what would be your advice?
A first time investor is like somebody who wants to move into development.
Let's start with a first time investor, someone that might own a home or might not, but wants to get into investing in real estate, like a brand new real estate investor.
Yeah. I would say start with something attainable. And I'd say be as involved as possible. And it's not like you have to be involved forever, but for the first year or two, and let me unpack this a little bit. So I'd say buy something attainable, and depending on where, maybe it's a $300,000 or $400,000 house, maybe it's a duplex. Look for quality. It doesn't have to be brand new, but like look for. I always look for like, is the rot, like, is it in good condition and can I paint it? Or do some simple fixes to kind of, as I call, lipstick a pig. Like you're for pretty cheap making it better. And I think the other part is like be very hands-on, like manage it yourself, like pay for a property management software, coordinate the landscaping, do the turns, do the paint, pull the carpet, like walk the property. You'll learn. It's the whole thing is like you'll learn. You'll save a little money, but you'll learn so much more. And you'll probably learn like what you want to buy. You'll be like, I'm not going to buy, I don't like this attribute of this property. Maybe it's a hillside and there's drainage issues.
Yeah.
And you're having to put French drains in. And it's like, you dig in that French drain, like every property you look at, you're going to say like, well, what's the drainage like on this? Like what, so you're going to look at it from a different perspective because it caused you pain. So that'd be my advice. And I think just look at it from a long-term perspective is like, don't feel like you have to do it all at once, do it sustainably, but like you have to start somewhere. And it's not gonna be perfect. It's never gonna be perfect, but buy that first one and try to figure it out. And then, when the time is right, 1, 2, 3 years down the road, maybe buy a second one and build into it. So,
Yeah, I was gonna say if you do the work and you find out how the house is put together, and it kind of helps build your bullshit meter when you have to work with contractors when you step away, because I know there's a
100%.
lot of people who can rip you off if you don't
Yep.
know what you're doing. Yeah, it's like $5,000 to replace that piece of carpet. Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's pervasive more than I'd like. It's pervasive in a lot of property management circles or maintenance circles of abusing maintenance costs, I'll say.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I mean, it easily can save you thousands of dollars a year on one property, just knowing what you're looking at and having the knowledge, like you said.
Yeah.
So.
And then going on to development, how would you recommend someone get started in that world?
Um, that's a little bit harder.
Your job and move to College Station.
Well, and I say that because like you can build a house
Right.
and you usually have a clear timeline, like within 6 months, I can
Yep.
have a complete house. Development is it really depends on where you're at in the country on timelines, but it can be like a 9 month to 5 year process with zero money coming in. So if it's, I would say build as much knowledge on like buying investment properties, maybe building a couple houses,
Hmm.
that sort of stuff even, and kind of work into it.
Put an
I think
ADU
with
in your backyard or something to start type thing.
sure, but like financial stability is huge. So whether
Yeah.
it's you or a partner on that, like you have to be at the point where you can stomach multi-year delays of no income,
Hmm.
or structure it in a way that allows that.
Affordable housing.
Affordable housing. That's great. No, it's great. I think the other thing is it really helps. It does help to have a knowledge of like you build a house, you realize like how the sewer and the water lines and the storm sewer, like when I build this house, how do I tie into the public infrastructure?
Hmm.
How am I connecting to it? What's there? What's underground? In a way that really helps you, to be honest, be able to conceptualize
Right.
on development. So I'd say kind of like wade into it. You can definitely hit a home run, maybe by luck sometimes. But like more consistently, I think building into that, and then probably doing a small development or more attainable, and then kind of growing. This probably goes without saying, but it's like the bigger the deal is, you can make more money, but you can also lose more money.
Hmm.
And a lot of times those differences are, at least I've found it's in that kind of nuanced knowledge and timing and relationships. And so it's like a deal can be a great deal, but if you get in over your skis and maybe don't have the right knowledge and the connections, like it can be a great deal and you can lose a lot of money at it. And you know what, like somebody like the experienced developer is going to come buy it from you at a discount in a year, when you're out of money. And so that is like timing, and maybe it's like partnering with that experienced developer to say like, you don't have unlimited time. Like, and I'm not that experienced, but if somebody comes to me and it's like, I'm not gonna act like I know what I'm doing, but I'm willing to help. I'm willing to do this. Like, here's a good opportunity. It's like, I don't have time to run with it, but like, I'll meet with you a couple times a week. We'll push it forward for a year, see where it is, and I can help stabilize it.
Hmm.
So I think a lot of times it comes down to like how The Go Giver is a great book if you
Hmm.
haven't read it,
Yeah.
but it's like one of the key things in there is like the amount that you are worth is defined by how much value you can give to other people.
Right.
And and I think it goes in that. It's like if you can find somebody that you can provide an insane amount of value to, they'll be willing to pay you whatever. So, or share in whatever, or what, that sort of thing. So, and it's so.
And how does someone contact you if they're, looking to buy college housing in College Station, Texas?
Luke at boxwoodrealestate.com, or phone number 310-383-4925. You can text or call anytime. So we have a website, but feel free to reach out if you, and if you want to do anything in Texas, if we can help, we'll steer you in the right direction. So,
Great.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Luke. Appreciate your time.
yeah,
Yeah, we
no,
really
I appreciate you guys having me, and thank you.